Good evening, everyone. Our group project is a lawsuit involving the Department of Justice versus Apple, a bite out of trust. It is presented by myself, Eva Ventura, Nashina Armstrong, Emanual Smith, Jorge Palomera, Pablo Paredes. Emanual Smith will take us through our agenda.
Thank you, Eva. So we're going to touch on the agenda and what's all we're going to be covering in this slideshow. The first thing we're going to talk about is what is an antitrust, what business practice has led to the suit, what legal trouble has Apple has faced, how did Apple respond, and we also will be discussing how does it affect consumers and business alike. And the first thing we're going to talk about will be the antitrust. So when it comes to antitrust is laws that prohibit anti-competitive conducting and merging that deprive American consumers, taxpayers, and workers of the benefits of competition within the market. The Sherman Act is an act that was passed in 1890, which has to do with monopoly, what they're suing Apple about. The Clayton Act and the Federal Trade Act created the federal trade, and it also focused on the unfair methods of competition and unfair acts or practices done by business. These laws are enforced by the Federal Trade and also by the Department of Justice. The next slide will be brought to you by Jorge, and he will be talking about bad negative business practice Apple has done.
I'm going to talk about Apple's negative business practices they've done throughout the years. One of the most popular ones is the green bubbles versus blue bubbles. And this degrades group chat quality, and it's just bad all around among Android users and iPhone users. It also uses an outdated SMS method instead of using a modern RCS standard for messaging. RCS stands for Rich Communication Service, and it's used among Android users, but not amongst Apple users. Also, Apple's known for using bad business practices among their ports. They use Lightning port instead of using USB-C. Almost everything around the world now uses USB-C, yet Apple wanted to use Lightning port, and the only reason they changed it was because they got sued by the EU. It also lacks APKs, Android application kits. This allows you to download apps from like other websites like Google Chrome or whatever. But Apple decides if you want an application, you must download it from the App Store. There's no other alternative unless you jailbreak your phone. And because of this, iOS has lots of restrictions on their applications, and it's just negative for the consumer all around. Take it away, Pablo.
Thank you, Jorge. Now we'll be getting into what kind of the history of legal trouble that Apple has faced. Besides its EU lawsuit about overcharging ports, like Jorge just spoke about, they've also been faced with fines from the European government, specifically with the UK. Over $1.95 billion in fines due to restricting its developers from informing their consumers of cheaper alternatives to music programs, specifically because Apple owns Apple Music and it requires typically for all iOS devices to use that app and really makes it hard for anybody to use anything else. More specifically, Epic Games, the parent company of Fortnite, has removed its games from the App Store due to a lawsuit where involving Apple not allowing for microtransactions where you purchased in-game credit through their application. They specifically only want in-game credit to be bought through their Apple Play Store. And this affects the consumer in how it creates more fines and creates an upcharge versus if you bought it directly from Epic Games. Furthermore, when we go back to chargers, a court in Sao Paulo, Brazil, has fined Apple for not allowing any more chargers in their newer products. Apple has stated that they're doing this in order to prevent carbon emissions, but the court in Sao Paulo found that this is a right taken away from its consumer, as it is expected for there be a way to charge your device when you buy a new device. Next, we will go with Eva Ventura, who will let us know how Apple has responded to these allegations.
Thank you, Pablo. Apple's response to the Department of Justice lawsuit is that it's going to fight it. Apple says that the lawsuit could empower the government to take a heavy hand in designing people's technology. A biggest change you'll see is in Apple's App Store. Apple currently doesn't allow super apps as a one-stop shop app on their store. An offering like WeChat, dubbed China's Everything app, can provide an alternative to the Apple ecosystem for people to communicate, bank, share memories, talk to businesses, and more. Apple's biggest fear is becoming irrelevant to their customers. The concept of super apps haven't been very welcomed in the United States, and it could be because of the resistance that Apple has to put them on their app store, or it may not be something that consumers want here at the moment. Apple's next move would be to add support to their standard called RCS, which is Rich Communication Services. It's intended to roll out later this year. It's considered the replacement to the alternative SMS or short messaging service, which is currently being used between Android and Apple users. Next would be offering more hardware to integrate with the iPhone. The Apple Watch offers an easy setup, seamless compatibility, and deep integration with the iPhone and Apple ecosystem, whereas third-party watches are far more limited in the scope of features they're able to offer. It's fast and easy to respond to a text or email from an Apple Watch, and with other smartwatches, it is not. Apple's response is it will defend itself. The stakes are critical, and it took over 3 years for the Department of Justice and Microsoft to come to a settlement. So this will not happen overnight. Nashina will now cover the impacts Apple has on its consumers.
Yes, thank you, Eva. The outcome of the lawsuit could mean positive or negative changes to the consumers. On the positive side, consumers could see changes such as lower costs for app subscriptions and additional payment options. The additional payment options would allow users to take advantages of discounts, avoiding Apple's standard fees. There could also be positive changes for app developers. The App Store takes a 30% cut for in-app purchases from developers. And in order to stay afloat, the developers must recoup this cost from their customers. So reducing or eliminating this 30% would be a win-win for both parties. Some negative outcomes could be increased security risk, limited availability to products, and increased pricing. On the operation side, Apple is already feeling the impact of the lawsuit. The major hit has been the stock market. At the close of trading on March 21st, Apple shares have fallen more than 4%, causing them to lose $113 billion from its market capitalization. If they were to lose the lawsuit, there could be impacts such as reduced profits and restrictions to freely design their technology. Now I'm going to pass it back to Pablo so that he can give you the conclusions for our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nashina. So in conclusion, Apple is being sued by the US government in order to prevent a monopoly due to its harmful business practices that prevent competition. It is already a major player in the phone industry, and due to its recent practices, it's gaining more and more ground. They've faced similar legal issues in the past, specifically in Europe, and especially in the UK, where they've already been sued for antitrust reasons. They had to pay over $1.9 billion in fines. And its defenses are that they're doing their best. They're trying to switch over to more universal friendly messaging systems, like RCS. But the change cannot happen overnight. And the results of these business practices have affected both consumers and the business side alike. Consumers are facing more fees and just typically harder times of working outside and within the ecosystem of Apple, as well as the business side has faced, stockholders have faced drops in their stock shares, as well as this is preventing Apple from it's kind of limiting their technological advance within the laws of, especially if they were to lose this lawsuit, they have a more limited ability to produce technology freely. And this has been our presentation over the US suit to Apple, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.